Hello and welcome to another update. This will be one of my last ones on my phone as I will soon be back at the very latest this weekend. So, starting out, Remy comes with a prediction that in the next 2 to 3 weeks there will be some sort of offensive action being taken by either or both sides, as he mentions that both sides are more than 80% complete, which means that it is just a question of who strikes where and when. And in other news, India and China have both started buying Russian oil above the price cap, which means that they're going against the EU and US sanctions on Russian oil. So we will see how the West responds to that. Then we see here the latest Bakhmut update by Remy, where he says he is pro-Russian, so that is why he says positive news. So he says, received positive news from Bakhmut, PMC Wagner plus airborne groups managed to take full control of the hospital in northwest Bakhmut at Peremogi Street. The terrain and the area around it will now be cleared. So the area that he mentions has been captured by the Russian forces is this hospital right here, and this is the street right next to it. So it is the Peremogi Street. It goes through this area. So the Russian forces have then advanced from this area and have now captured the hospital in this area. As for the railway line, Wagner managed to expand the bridgehead and they pushed further west through the UA's defenses at several points. So if we look at the railway line, we see that the Russian forces must have pushed through here in the southwestern parts, as they have already passed through. Then there could be some breakthroughs by the train station and in these northern areas, as they still don't have full control over the eastern parts. Although there are reports that the Ukrainians withdrew from this area, there could be other traps similar to the ones with video evidence of major buildings stored with ammunition that the Ukrainians blew up as some sort of mine to slow down the Russian forces and cause heavy casualties. So the Russian forces are now slowly advancing as to make sure that they don't get trapped like that anymore. As for the flanks, we can see that the Russian and Ukrainian forces continue fighting in these areas. The Ukrainian forces try to counterattack to expand their zone of control and protect the supply lines, while the Russian forces are heavily shelling and bombing those counterattacks. Then we see here in the Marinka area, according to the latest deep state map update, that the Russian forces have actually managed to break through the center and are now fighting on the western parts of the city, as we see this tank advancing on the western part. We also see this part here where the Russian forces are slowly advancing in the Serebryansky forest area, as the Russian forces push through the Ukrainian defenses in this area. Then we have the last night update by Remy. To the north, Wagner has gained full control of Krainia Street. So as we can see here, Krainia Street is this street that goes through this part here. So that means the Russian forces have managed to capture this whole area. And that also means that they are now fighting in the fortified area by the Ukrainian forces. There are reports that they're fighting by Levanovsky Street. So they're advancing westwards to the northwestern direction of the fortified area, which is this area right here that the Ukrainians are defending. As I said, Wagner was able to expand the bridgehead in the center around the station. Current fights are taking place on Pavla Novorodsteva Street and Poleyevaya Street. So this is actually very interesting because Poleyevaya Street is this one and Pavla Street is this one. So according to Remy, the Russian forces have actually managed to reach these two streets, and that must be through the main road, and they fight southwards from this action. So the Russian forces have managed to get a big breakthrough here west of the main train station, and have managed to advance a significant part to the fortified areas of the Ukrainian forces, which means that most of the residential areas here to the east are most likely already abandoned by the Ukrainian forces, as the Russian forces are just advancing through them, and the Ukrainian forces are most likely holding these fortified positions rather than fighting in the residential areas. Now we are nearing the end game of Bakhmut. So Verbna Street is right here, and Looking Street is here to the west. So the Russian forces are here trying to gain control over this area right here as they try to advance towards the Ukrainian fortified positions by this educational center here in the southwest of the city. Then we also see fighting here in the southwestern part of that area, as well as by Zhavskovskogo Street, which is this main road here in this area. So the Russian forces are doing all they can to push through the southwestern part, and they're actually fighting on the whole southwestern front. So they're attacking through by the Mix Stadium, as well as in this central part, in the eastern part, and just southwest of the railway. So the Russian forces are pushing on the whole southern front, and at the same time they're pushing straight westwards through the rail lines, and they're also pushing straight southwards from the northern area, which means that the Russian forces are actually doing a full frontal assault on the whole front line here in Bakhmut. Then we see the latest updates by Remy, where he says 5,000 Ukrainian soldiers are still in the city. The rest were withdrawn from the city and moved to Ivanivske, Bohdanivka, and Khomova areas in order not to allow the Russian forces to break through. So the Ukrainian forces now actually have more forces on their flanks by Ivanivske, Khomova, and Bohdanivka than within the city itself, which means that they are just trying to slow down the Russian forces, but have essentially already given up on holding the city. And then the very latest updates. Battles take place 80% west of the railway line, so the last part east of the railway line still has not been taken. Wagner expands the bridgehead in some areas, elsewhere control of the railroad tracks in the area is still being fought over. The north is 95% under the full control of BMC Wagner, so what exactly is considered the north, I'm not really sure. Heavy fighting is also taking place slightly south and east of the old hospital. Wagner storms UA positions on Tulbuhina Street. Tulbuhina Street is the street slightly north of the hospital, which means that the Russian forces are trying to take control over the areas here to the northwest outskirts of the city as they try to reach the supply line that goes through Khomova area. And fighting also continues by Irini Levchenko Street, which is the street just south of the other street. So the Russian forces are continuing their attacks here in the northwestern parts of the city. Then we also see the latest reports suggesting that heavy fighting is taking part here south of the Crimea Street. So the Russian forces, after capturing everything to the north of it, they are now fighting within the central area as they try to take complete control over this area. And that is all for this update. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.